The Tale of Shawn by Craig Greenwood. Now Shawn was a man who was larger than life. He could tame a wild horse by the time he was 5. At 9 he was known as a boxer and still. He could pile up dirt, making mountains from hills. Shawn once took a walk from his house outside Dimbley. He came to the beach and jumped in and started swimming. And when he came up on the far other side, he ran, didn't stop, crossed the continent wide. When he finally came back, he sat down for a drink and said, "Give me a glass, boys, I need to think." We poured him a beer, and he stopped us right there. "I'll take some salt water, it's good for my hair." At age 12, he built him a boat he could sail. He hired 5 men and went off into hell. One man returned, and he held up his net. And inside Shawn showed us the most evil gent. He thrashed and he snarled, and we all asked him clear, "Is Satan your name, and what brought you here?" He hissed back and told us he'd been in a fight with Shawn, but he'd lost, taken down by his right. At that Shawn decided to let Satan go. We begged Shawn to keep him, but he told us no. "'Tis better to let evil loose in the world. Without it you boys wouldn't get any girls." At 23 Shawn found the love of his life. He decided to turn the lass into his wife. At first she said no, but Shawn won her over by picking her trees and flowers and clovers. And when the time came, the girl birthed a child. The first looked like Shawn, handsome and wild. The next 2 were twins, and then there were 4. But they weren't done yet, because Shawn wanted more. Shawn taught his boys how to read and to write. His girls he taught math, but they all knew to fight. His kids called him Daddy, and his wife called him Dear. The men called him Sir, and no one he feared. But that was all. There's more story to tell. Shawn knew how to buy, and he knew how to sell. He dabbled in real estate, bought stocks and bonds. When he didn't buy land, Shawn bought up the ponds. At age 36, most of Ireland he'd bought. He woke up one day and looked out at his lot. He said, "This is fine, but it's not quite enough. I think I'll take England." And he packed up his stuff. He went down to London on long dusty roads. He never stopped once, never lightened his load. He went to the king and said, "Listen to me. I'll be taking your castle, your land, and your queen." The king told him no, and he tried to resist. But after an hour or 2 with Shawn's fists, "Fine, take my land." And Shawn left with much more than when he'd began. Once Shawn and his lass had a wee little spat. She left and he didn't know where she was at. He started to cry, and the rivers he made flowed under the trees and into the shade. He'd cried him a lake, 'twas the size of a city. But then she came back and was filled with such pity. No longer they wanted to bicker and fight. Instead they made up late into the night. One day he went fishing for less than an hour. But soon he returned, for it started to shower. With him he brought back his pole and his tent, and 500 fish he'd caught with his net. At 45 Shawn thought he would retire. He'd lived a fine life, many kids he had sired. So he laid down his head and he closed his eyes tight. And I kid you not, Shawn laid down and died. We buried his body, and the tears that were shed ran down our cheeks, for our old Shawn was dead. We put the dirt over his grave in a pile. His wife cried and then came home after a while. And when she walked in and pulled down her hair, Shawn was having a drink right there in his chair. She told him, "All of us thought you had died, but here you are sitting, now tell me no lies." He had told her he'd died and up to heaven he'd gone. He'd met with the angels and finally with God. God told him, "Sit back, relax, you'll do no more work." But Shawn didn't consider that much of a perk. So God sent him away to his home, to his life. to his earth and the river, and also his wife. Said he'd rather be here with the work and the sin, than to not have his wife, his home, and his kin. And that is the story of our old friend Shawn. He was wise, brave, and fearless, quite smart and quite strong. If ever you could be half of that man, you'd be second best, and also my friend.